How do people learn, memorize, and put into action what they've learned? Well, we're obsessed with how to get people open for the training, on the training, absorb the information, put it into practice, and then put it forward when they leave the training. We're in the development game. That's what we do at Smarter Selling. We're developing people so they're confident and certain. They have a universal process and a common language. They know what to do and how to do it, and they become the best versions of themselves. And we all know when somebody's at peak performance, they're driving growth in a way that has integrity and authenticity. They feel great about themselves. They position themselves as that trusted advisor, the authority in their field, and that subject matter expert. They can handle different resilience, they can handle objections, they know how to hold their rate. All manner of things happen when they're in that state. So when we talk about development, we talk about the different states. So mindset comes first, then the actual application of the program, and then how to reinforce it. That's the memory and making sure they do it. So with all those things in mind, let's start first of all with the mindset. So when we go ahead, when we partner together as us being your training provider, to develop your team, we go through a training guidance. And this guidance has page by page what's going to happen, how we're going to understand your business, downloadables, page by page, before the program, on the program, after the program. Before the program, there's a whole section how to get your team to see the value of development. Now, you're going to have a team that's likely to be very mixed, maybe very seasonal people, been around a long time. Maybe their last external training was more than 3 years ago and things have evolved rapidly, so they need development on that. Maybe you've got some newer junior burgers in the team and people in between, right? So it's all about making sure they see the value. So one of those downloads in that training guidance is how to make sure that when you explain that you're going to have development, what's in it for them, that's out to make their life easy. The value is to them. We're going to pick up their self-worth and see that it's not necessarily a gap, but it's an evolution of what they're currently doing. For some, it might be a gap, and then again, you might be clear about that. We talk about people's ability. We have a whole list, by the way, of every single sales skill, which you can tick for each team member. And we talk about them acquiring that skill. There's a gap, they haven't got it, they need to acquire it. We talk about plateau, which means they've got it to some degree, but they might have learned it 6 years ago and things have changed, times have changed, the way we communicate has changed. They might have plateaued, but the buying journey has changed and they're not quite there yet. And people that would say are actually competent in that skill, whatever that lesson in that skill would be, they could be competent. Now we're talking about mastery of that skill. In other words, in a position they can mentor and coach others, and they can refine and gain 1%ers on top, right? So that's what we talk about. Getting them on board is crucial because as they come in the room, and the majority of our training is face-to-face because we want them to be cut off from everything else and fully absorbed and sleeves up and in. As they come in, we want them to see the value before it's even started. We want to hit the ground running with them being on board. There's other bits we do here. We send them questionnaire. There's a whole lot of things we do with the leaders. There's a lot of psychology behind getting the person ready. One of those things, by the way, is asking them questions about their current skill set. And numerous times each week we have a leader say, I know you sent the questionnaire because the team already are answering the phone differently or engaging differently with clients because of what we've brought out in the questionnaire. A good example is we sent one the other day, different questions to different team members, but the very first contact point, that was a contact centre, it was the receptionist, their questions were, as you're the director of first impressions, the first person they speak to off the website, you're the biggest influencer of that potential client. How do you make sure you're not bogged down with compliance and thinking you're triaging, and instead you're connecting, engaging in a more meaningful way where your intent is to help them and look after them and put them through the journey so they know they were the right person, the right organisation. And it was worded like that. And there's about 7 questions to do with that. And each time it said, would you like to learn more about this, from 1 to 10, 10 being yes, please. The director said by lunchtime, they're all acting differently on the phone. They're completely engrossed in the conversation. They're having more meaningful conversations. They're passing the person over sold to the next person, because that was question number 2. How do you make sure you transfer them rapport and your potential client sold to the next person? The training hadn't even happened. This is the pre-work to prime them and get them in the right headspace. There's things they can learn that's of value to them. So that's a bit of a hint. Now let's go to the program itself. Very practical. If there's a word that comes out, it's relevance and practical. We have fully immersive programs. There's breakout rooms, people sit around tables, they have a workbook, they share what they've learnt with somebody else. If you've got a private one, it's customised to you. They share with somebody else what they've learnt, what they're going to do about it. There's a lot of psychology of how people learn. We want to make sure they're safe. There's not a PowerPoint that goes up. There's none of this sort of, I'm not behind a pedestal. I'm with the team. We're all in the same place together. The leaders are in the room saying we're all in this together. We're all supporting each other. The leaders have been very well prepped before to make sure they ask lots of questions, because that message to the team is we're all in this together. And we make sure that during this program they shift from where they were thinking to a new way of thinking. And that's what we work on at Smarter Selling. We work on, yes, a strategy and what to say and how to say it, and the touch points and what you can do and the depths of what you can do at each link in the chain. But the reality is everything is down to your attitude and your mindset, and your mindset therefore is the biggest thing we need to work on. So as we go through our time together, we draw a lot back to mindset. That particular program runs, and of course that program runs on whatever topics we've decided. Majority of clients will end up having, if they haven't had training for more than 4 years, they'll have a deep dive year. They'll probably have 2 days of learning these foundational skills, about 7 or 8 blocks. Then they'll go on about 4 months later to another 2 days, which would be half a day recapping and adding, and then more skills on top, and then another 2 days again on recap, and then more skills and more skills and more skills. And then they'll go into what we call a 1 day top up, which is it could be 1 day just because your competitors have merged and there's 4 more challenges and 6 more objections, and the 1 day could just be on objections alone. 8 hours on objections and role playing. I'm telling you now, by 5 o'clock that day, they don't have those objections anymore. Their default is naturally on making sure the client's comfortable talking about the objection, that they've done pre-work with the client to make sure the objection's been kicked out of the ballpark, and every step with the client has minimized it but brought it to attention and got rid of it. So the way people act after multiple, we don't call them role plays actually, we call them exercises. The way people act is different as they go through, and we make it very comfortable. We say, who would like to share what their colleague's done? They go, oh, so-and-so, he asked me 5 great questions, etc., etc. So we put together, with your help as a leader, great scenarios, and we roll them out as fun exercises. And it's very important the way we do it. We're not judging. We're not people to judge each other. We've set it up in a very safe environment because we want people to intrinsically want to learn and want to better themselves, not do it because they're beaten over the head because the boss is in the room. So there's no bosses sitting in the back judging. None of that goes on. Everyone's in and everyone's on the same side. And then, so that's how they learn. There's a whole psychology to that, and in the training guidance, we map out how your team learn, including things like how the room's set up, how much fresh air they've got, how much sleep they've had the night before, and of course, how you've set up the training in the first place. If you've set it up in the right way, they're there ready to learn. So there's a whole lot of moving parts that happen before the program and then on the program. Often when we have 2 and 3 days, 1 whole day would be pretty much dedicated to bouncing in and out of these different exercises and scenarios, and we might punctuate it with some extended dispersonality profiling or values levels or reading others, or insert 60 other types of topics in between that. But the idea is for 1 and 2 days they have learnt the skills, now they're putting it into practice. And when we have 2 and 3 days, that's when we do a huge amount of practice. I always think it's one thing to learn about, how to dance or how to swim. It's another thing getting the pool and swim in. That whole day is getting the pool and swim in. That's when you actually go, oh, my default went straight back to that. I went straight back to being reactive. I went straight into jumping into this. I've just realised I don't actually know that solution well enough at all, so I don't ever ask questions that lead them. That's when it all happens. Now what happens afterwards? We have 2 very clear structures to ensure the leader drives this afterwards. You need to make sure that your team are on board, yes, but that each leader is on board. Hence, in our pre-work, we do a whole heap of work with the leaders to make sure we're all aligned on the goals, the focus areas, what's going to happen in every step of the way, and what phase we're on and what the priorities are. Is this phase 1 training 1 or 2 blocks, or is this phase 8 we're now on in terms of refinement and extension? And what together, the leaders, we work very closely together. So now we're going to go to reinforcement, reflection, putting it into action and memorizing it. So we have a whole page on our training guidance about how to memorize. It also goes to the team. It's a separate one, goes to the team, how to remember information. And then we set up 2 different structures. One, I'll share with you now. It's called the buddy system. That means they get their book and they share with somebody else that's their buddy what they learned, how it happened. We say 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. So let's just say I'm with Juliet. I might say, Juliet, Thursdays at 4 o'clock, we have our 15 minutes together. Week 1 is me. I'm directing what we do. Let's go to reading buyer behaviours, how people operate differently, how they buy differently. Let's go to page 17 to 25. And on the Academy, because if your program is more than 2 days live, you'll have access to the full program online. And on the Academy, it's this video. And so before our Thursday meeting at 4 o'clock, that individual and me both go on and read our notes, and we re-immerse ourselves and think about successes and results and what happened. We watch the video if you want to on the Academy. Then we get together and we've now both been armed with the same foundation and we discuss it. And that's it. The following week, Juliet says to me, you know, those different questioning techniques. There was 8 pages on questions. Let's review the questions we're asking. Oh, that's in the book, but also on the Academy, there's about 7 videos on questions. So I can then think, oh, before Thursday, I'll look at that section, all to do with different questioning techniques. I can re-immerse myself in it. Yes, I've started to use that. Oh, yes, I haven't used that one yet. I could have used that this morning. I immerse myself in my notes. I might look at the Academy, look at some of those videos, and again come armed for our 4 o'clock to 4:15, where we discuss what we've learned. By doing that, and a structure that we give you, you're enabling your team to have, as part of the fabric of your organisation, that learning, developing, evolving is part of the fabric of the organisation. It's not something you do once a year for 2 days. Those days are long gone. This is all about continuing developing your team, continuous development. It's all about confidence and certainty. It's all about empowering your team with the skills. Now, we know when they all happen, mindset, great program, practical, relevant, and then you do it, that your team are up. You know, the average up is 36%. When the leader's on board, we already know they're pretty about 45 to 50%. When all the leaders are on board and the team are on board, they want to start early, they don't leave the room, we know they're on 100% up on their last quarter's figures, because it's there in the room. So we can see. And it's usually all down to how the leader's attitude lands at the very beginning. Now, that's now happened. You're going to say, what's next? Well, usually what's next is 3 months later, we loop back and we go, let's have the next foundational block, and on they learn. What you're really saying is, when you work for your organisation, learning, development, evolving your skills is part of the fabric. It's part of what you do to support your team. So yes, revenue is up, conversions are up. You can imagine they feel better about themselves and have got more confidence in their solution. But there's also a side effect I'm going to quickly mention. They're more positive in team meetings. They contribute more positively when they're around other members of the team. They've got a higher emotional intelligence because they've learnt those skills. They lean into different challenges and obstacles and roadblocks and objections because they've got the strategy on how to do that, because they've practiced that. They're better at asking questions, they're better at listening, their judgment has gone, their awareness is up. The side effect is you've got a more empowered team that stick around longer with higher skills. So when somebody joins the business, they're joining an empowered, dynamic, proactive team that have got a universal process and a common language. So to tie this all together, how people learn and they memorize comes down to those 3 things. Getting people on board at the beginning, which we work together with you on. We've got a very clear structure of how that works. On the program itself, making sure it's interactive, engaging, relevant and meaningful. And then everybody, particularly the leaders on board, to reinforce that phase going forward. And then usually, as I said, 2 or 3 times a year, we're picking up and we're moving the dial to the next one. Because you'll see the results pretty quickly. Often people even make phone calls night 1 and they come in day 2 and say, I've just made 4 phone calls and this is the difference already. And that was so obvious. Because remember, when we're sharing, we want people to be trusted advisors, right? The authority in their field and subject matter experts. When we're sharing things, we share it in a way that they get buy-in. So they're not told to say this sentence. Here's the sentence you say. The way we teach is they mentally go, gosh, yeah, that's obvious. Why am I not doing that? What sentence could I say? Then we give them the sentences. So you will see in the room every 10 minutes somebody going, that's so obvious. Why am I not doing that? That's such an obvious thing. And we know when it's obvious, they'll just do it. So things are not such a huge stretch they can't see themselves doing it. Occasionally on the really senior things it is that stretch, but we help them with structures and processes to make it easy. Our life is to make this transition to where they are to where you want them to be easy, seamless, obvious and natural. There are key words that we use. So everything about what we do, we don't say, I know this is going to be hard or this is a bit of a stretch. We go, this is easy. This is how others are doing it. This is how easy you could do it. But the big thing is we get buy-in, and how Smarter Selling stands out is we're obsessed with getting people to have buy-in, because then we know that everything else goes smoothly and you'll get the results you need with happy customers on board, many more of them paying the rate that you want to have and easily referring you on. I look forward to hearing from you.